Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
As we come to the end of at least part of our Exodus story, there's a question that, at least for the rabbis, sort of goes over everything that we've read through the book of Shemot so far. When we talk about the miraculous saving of Moses, and we talk about the plagues, and we talk about the splitting of the sea and getting out, and all of it, the rabbis ask a question which any of us probably have in the back of our mind, which is essentially, why? Why would God choose to get us out of Egypt in the way in which God did? Basically, the fundamental premise goes like this. God is God. So you've got the Israelites there in slavery because there was a Pharaoh that didn't know Joseph. We got that part of it. They have to get to the land of Israel because that's the promised land, don't you know? We got that part of it. So God could just, and they'd be there. Why do we have to have the hardening of the heart and the 10 plagues and the getting out and the stealing of the jewelry and the wandering in the desert and all of that? We could be here already. So the rabbi's answer is, of course, that God could only do it the way that God did for the sake of whom? Us. Right? God doesn't care how we get to the land. God's God. God is immutable, perfect, and great. So God doesn't need it. But the humans around needed to see this. And so when it comes to the plagues, when it comes to some of this, we talk about it's the nations of the world, right? This is God saying, don't mess with Israel, or else, frogs, darkness, death, beware. But when we get to the moment today, with the splitting of the sea, the rabbis say that this is all for the Israelites who were walking through. This is, I don't know if it's the first case in the Torah, but this is a case in the Torah of what our teachers would call experiential education. God brings the people through in order to teach them something. And so then, naturally, the next question is, so what do we learn by walking through the sea on dry land? And what we're told is that the experience of walking through the sea, and again, you can picture it different ways, but in my head, and I think in the rabbi's head, we're talking Cecil B. DeMille, like whoosh, right? There's walls of water on either side, and the people are walking through on what is now miraculously beach. Just dry land, going through, walking. And the rabbis say this was to teach us a couple of things. First and foremost, it was a reminder that our God, the God that we are putting our faith in, is the God who is in control of everything. And the rabbis point out, the son of a Rabbi basically points out that most of the miracles that happen for us in the desert and getting out are all things that go against the way of nature, right? Water is not supposed to split. Bread is not supposed to rain down from the heavens, right? All of this is to teach us that God is in control of absolutely everything. This is the God who created the world, and you've got to respect that when you think about what we're going to do with God, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The other ideas come that splitting of the sea and walking through on dry land gave the Israelites a chance to reflect on creation and the natural world, because they're literally walking through the world's first aquarium. They're looking and they're seeing the ocean and the sea and what's inside, and it gave the people a chance to appreciate nature and God's world in a way that they weren't able to for all those years of servitude. And then finally, the Talmud says that it also taught us silence. It taught us the power of silence, because as we walk through, apparently there wasn't a sound, as the people were just in awe of what God was able to do. And they learned in that moment both to find silence in themselves, but also they learned of the silence and power of God. because they see what God is capable of. And the fact that God doesn't split oceans every single time someone, blasphemes or insults God or whatever was happening in the years before, and Pharaoh and all of that, it's a sign of God's restraint and power. Here's my little digression. I had a teacher in seminary who never made jokes, was very serious, never made jokes. And we would make lots of jokes. Other people, not me. But we would make lots and lots of jokes. And at one point, the professor sort of made a comment about how this is serious and the humor. And we said, well, why don't you ever tell jokes? He said, I choose not to. And we were like, yeah, sure, okay, fine. And he laid into every single, like a stand-up comic. He, for 1 minute straight, just made fun of the entire room and then said, see, I choose not to. And didn't tell a joke again. And weird story, but that's what God's doing with the splitting of the Red Sea. God is saying, I could do this anytime I wanted. Everything in the world bends to my will, and I choose not to. I choose to let the world go according to its natural course, and so you, as you get out, need to think about that. So this experience of splitting the sea and walking through on dry land and finding moments of reflection and silence and also appreciation and wonder is all well and good for the people, that did it back then. But the question then is, what do we have? How do we find that? And really, friends, the answer is Shabbat and right here. Shabbat is the splitting of the sea that we get every single week. There is chaos and ocean on one side. There is chaos and ocean on the other side. But we get 25 hours of dry land in the middle. And if we can create it for ourselves, and the rabbis actually say that parnasa, earning a living for a human is as difficult as splitting the Red Sea. And the idea of that might be that it's just, it's hard out there for the Jews. But actually, I think that there's something deeper to that phrase, which is making a living is as hard as splitting the Red Sea, because we have to worry about making a living. We have to worry about the world that's going on. We have to be a part of it, but we also have to be able to find moments where we split the sea, we create some dry land for ourselves, and we have a moment to reflect, to think about the world around us. We have a moment to find silence. Silence for ourselves speaking, and also maybe silence for all of the information that we take in all the rest of the time. And we find a moment to feel like we're on solid ground in a world that does not always feel that way. And this synagogue in this moment is a similar thing. And with this, I'm going to let you in on conversations that we have been having and are going to continue to have for decades and decades and decades, which is when you walk into this room, how much of the rest of the world needs to come in here with us? Because there's a lot going on in the rest of the world as we talk about. There's a lot that is happening that affects the Jewish people. There's a lot that is happening that affects the people in this room. There's a lot that the people in this room can and should do about what's going on in the world out there. And when we come in here, maybe we need to find some dry land sometimes, where we split the sea and we shut off what's going on and we just be together. We be as one, to look at and reflect on what's outside of us, to find the strength that is silence, and to reflect on the miracle of creation. And Shabbat's whole point is to think about the miracle of creation as we create a moment of what does that mean for us. And what it might mean is just being here and walking together. And what it might mean is finding silence. And what it might mean is teaching each other to appreciate the world outside of this space as we appreciate what the dry land in this space does for us. But we can't stay in the Yabashah. We can't stay in the dry land. It's meant to be a conduit to get us somewhere. We're getting to the other side. And when we get to the other side, as much silence, as much appreciation as the people have found, for 100 million bonus points, what's the first thing that the people do when they get out of the sea on the other side? They sing. Exactly right. They sing together in praise and joy, because singing, and I know we talked about this last week, and I'm just going to mention it again, because I think it's very important, because singing is a way that everyone is able to express themselves at the same time as individuals, but making something beautiful together. We have to think about what we sing. We have to think about the words. We have to think about the pacing. We have to think about all of the different things that go into making a song. We also all have different parts to play and to sing. And sometimes you know the words and you're ready to go and you're going to lead the group. And other times you kind of are feeling a little blah today and you're going to let the choir buoy you and bring you along. And that's okay. That's what it means to be a part of a singing community. Being part of a singing community brings us all together. It makes us all one, even as we're allowed to be who we are. Be a alto, a bass, a soprano, a other tenor. That's the other one. Whatever you are, you bring into this place. You can sing what you have to sing, and we all blend together to make a harmony that is more beautiful than any one of us could be on our own. So the silence and the reflection of the dry land leads to the singing and the praise and the unity that we get when we come out. And so just as we need to create in our space the ability to be a dry land moment, we also need to be a place where we can sing together, as we do so often, as we invite people to do so often. So we will create spaces that are reflective. We need to create spaces where we can be silent, but we also need to make sure we create places where everyone gets to sing their unique notes and where we blend everything together to make something more beautiful than we could. Shabbat Shalom, friends.